All right, welcome back to Niners Nightly on the Sports Leader, and with us a familiar face, a familiar voice for all you guys, JT the Brick, who's been doing sports broadcasting for years and years, many different spots. Enjoyed him recently on Sirius XM on Mad Dog Radio. He's obviously the voice of the Raiders. He'll be on the call with Matt Millen and Eric Allen on the Raiders broadcast for the Niners-Raiders game on Saturday afternoon, and he's with us on KNBR to talk a little bit about it. JT, great to see you. Great to talk to you.
Yes, Larry, where I got my start in 1996 overnights on KNBR before the birth of KNBR 1050, home of the Raiders back in the day.
Mariner Marcia would call up, and I man, there were some great calls. The energy of your calls were amazing, and your show, I mean, I listened to it religiously. What year did it start on KNBR?
It started in 96. The first shows I was ever on, because I got syndicated right out of the gate at a company called Sports Fan Radio Network.
Right.
And
the dream Pete Rose, I think, didn't they have Pete Rose?
Yeah. I co-hosted the Pete Rose Show for 18 months. But what was cool about it, my shift back then was 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. It was a 5-hour show. And it was cleared everywhere because no one had a late night show back then. Nobody. And it was on in Boston leading up to Morning Drive and Miami and Dallas and this great station, KNBR. And Bob Agnew put me on there. He got a little upset when I called him to introduce myself. Why are you calling me? I'm saying, well, I'm on your radio station. I'm a former stockbroker. I'd like to say hello. I got scolded for that, but I was doing the show for so many years that I was a long shift, man. 5 hours solo back in the day. And it really gave me the launch of my career before I moved to the Bay Area in 99, 2000 and got hired with the Raiders to do their pre and post game in 1998, the same day that John Gruden got hired, the first time to be the head coach of the Raiders. And now he's winning this hopeful lawsuit against the NFL. So it's all coming full circle.
Well, and the Raiders have reinvented themselves this offseason. They brought in Pete Carroll. They brought in Chip Kelly. They brought in John Spytek. Tom Brady's a part owner. What do you think of the new regime? I mean, it seems to me from the outside view that they had a very good personnel offseason with veterans in the draft. Who are the key figures there?
Well, you nailed it. John Spytek's the GM. He came over from Tampa Bay, where they won a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield. He played college football with Tom Brady at Michigan. So that's how they're tied together. Pete Carroll comes in instead of Ben Johnson, which we're all thrilled about. And now Pete Carroll, who had a dynasty at USC and had great teams in Seattle, is changing everything with the Raiders, along with Tom Brady. So Chip Kelly, $6 million as an offensive coordinator, and some pretty good players. I think the Raiders, Larry, had a really good draft, led by Ashton Genty, the star running back from Boise State. But they got to put the pieces together. They told a lot of other players to go and leave who weren't Spytek, Pete Carroll guys. And now they're bringing in players that fit their size and scheme and trying to turn the corner quickly for the Raiders and get it back on track.
What has the story been in camp? I know there's a lot of new faces, Genty being the most prominent, but who has been the story of Raider camp this summer?
Well, great question. There's a couple of stories. Gino's really good, and he's been very sharp, and he's got Brock Bowers and a lot of weapons on offense. I mean, the Raiders are going to break the huddle opening day in New England with Jacoby Myers, Michael Mayer, Brock Bowers, Trey Tucker. They got a good offense, and then they're hoping that Ashton Genty does what Brock Purdy did the year before, which would be offensive rookie of the year. Just have a brilliant run there. But I think what Pete's doing the most is he's bringing in competition on the defensive side. Their showcase with Max Crosby up front. Christian Wilkins was basically gone. They wanted him out. They got him out for an array of reasons. And now Pete Carroll's trying to figure out what the Raiders are going to do on the back end. They brought in Jeremy Chin from Washington, a good player. They developed Isaiah Palomal, who's related to Troy Polamalu. So they got some good players, but they're going to start a rookie at corner who's a converted wide receiver in Darian Porter. They're figuring out the other corner position. They got some veteran linebackers there. So Pete Carroll's trying to bring in players that he's been successful with in USC and or Seattle. They got to be a certain height, a certain weight, a certain look. And that's really the big talk. And then the other talk has been Jackson Powers Johnson, who was kind of predicted to be the center, and they're going to move him to right guard as they go with Jordan Meredith. And they're trying to find, air quotes, the best 5 offensive linemen to start. They want the best 5 players on the offensive line, and I think they're getting there.
You know, it's interesting. Gino last year in Seattle, I mean, Seattle's offensive coordinator up there, they threw the ball more than any team in pro football. They ran it less than any team in pro football. It put an inordinate amount of pressure on Gino. He was throwing left and right. What's the Raider plan going to be? It seems with Genty, isn't it going to be much more of a run-oriented threat? Or who knows? I mean, Jack Betch was great at TCU. Thornton is a burner. He's got great speed from Tennessee. Maybe some of these young receivers could come of age. What kind of offense do you think it's going to be this year?
It's going to be a run-based offense. That's what Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll want. That's why you draft Ashton Genty, number 6 overall, because you didn't have to take him there. You could have took an elite offensive lineman or a D tackle, and they went running back to run the ball. And Chip had 2 1,000-yard running backs at Ohio State, and they threw it very effectively there. So Chip's going to have Brock Bowers, who was the offensive rookie of the year, who broke every single tight end record in the history of the league when it comes to receptions. So he's got Brock Bowers as an underneath guy who can get to the sidelines. He's got a couple of burners in Trey Tucker and Dante Thornton that run 4-3. So he's got the over-the-top guys. But the key is going to be running the ball and keeping other teams off balance. They've got to find a way to establish the run. Last year, the Raiders were dead last, 32nd in rushing, under 80 yards a game. Can't work. You can't pass if you can't run. So I think you're going to see a heavy emphasis in the running game to set up the pass.
Very interesting. And then on the defensive side, you know, obviously you got Pete, and you also have Patrick Graham there as the defensive coordinator. They brought in a number of guys, Jermaine Pratt, really productive linebacker, Devin White. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, JT, that Devin White was in the Super Bowl and being hailed as one of the great linebackers in pro football. He's not old. I don't know what happened there. How's he looking this summer?
He's looked okay. That's a great question, Larry, because he comes from the John Spytek group over in Tampa, and there's no way Pete would bring him in if he didn't think he could get something out of him. Now, Bobby Wagner, who played for Pete Carroll, is a future Hall of Famer. Fred Warner with the 49ers is a future Hall of Famer. Devin White, 3 or 4 years into his career, had a hell of a career going. And then it hit the road. He had some injuries, hasn't been that productive, and they brought him back completely healthy. And I think they're going to line him up in the middle of the field and say, just go to the football and make plays. And the Raiders also brought in Jamal Adams. And I know you're familiar with him in the NFC West because he was injured for a couple of years in Seattle. And he sent videos to Pete Carroll of his offseason workouts and said, look at what I'm doing. He claims to be completely healthy. He hasn't in the last 3 years. They now are going to make him a weak side linebacker and a guy who's got some safety skills. So there's another guy that you're going to throw in. I mean, the Raiders might run, 5 defensive backs and 2 linebackers at times. They got Tyree Wilson, who was taken 7th overall, an edge rusher. They're going to kind of move him inside because they got Max and Malcolm Kuntz on the outside. So I think Pete's trying to accumulate some players on short-term deals to see if they can help the team instantly and then build through the draft with some of the young players on controlled contracts. But the defense has been better than the offense because of Max Crosby in training camp. I mean, Max is a wrecking ball. And as the Niners come to town for practices, as you know, tomorrow, and the Niners are going to have better personnel overall than the Raiders. They have a better roster. I know how many Niners are hurt coming into this game, but it'll be a really good test for the Raiders defense to see where they are because they didn't look good in the first half in Seattle in that tie game they played the other night.
You mentioned a guy that I wanted to ask you about. That's Tyree Wilson. I mean, Tyree Wilson is an enormous talent. First of all, he's an enormous man. I mean, he was a really good college football player at Texas Tech, and then it just didn't happen for whatever reason. But we're talking about 6'6", solid 265, 270, 275. I mean, this guy's a stud. And I liked what I saw in that first game. What's he looked like this summer? I mean, there's a ton of talent here. Somebody's got to get it out of him.
Yeah, he shouldn't have been drafted number 7 overall, period. I mean, he was drafted too high, and when he was drafted, he was injured. He was in a boot. So they drafted a guy who was injured, who was a one-dimensional player, and then he came to the Raiders and he couldn't get off the ball. He couldn't even get off the snap count. We're all shaking our heads. Wait a second. The guy was a speed merchant in college, and now he can't get off the snap count. He's like one Mississippi behind the play. So because of his contract, and this is his year. If he doesn't play well this year, I don't expect him to be here. After that, he wasn't drafted by Spy Tech or Carroll. But he's a tremendous talent, and he's got an unbelievable wingspan. He's like Kevin Durant, but 120 pounds heavier. And he's just a guy that can put his hands up. But he's going to have to help out now that Christian Wilkins was shipped out. So on third down, if the Raiders are in third and long on defense, you're going to be rushing Malcolm Kuntz, Max Crosby, Tyree Wilson, and a rotation of Adam Butler and the defensive tackles. Tyree Wilson's got to find a place to play because he's not starting at defensive end, and he's only going to get limited snaps. And when he gets them, he's got to pop. He's got to really shine if he's going to make it on this team next year.
JT the Brick with us on the UMO guest line as we look ahead to joint practice tomorrow. And, of course, the game coming up Saturday, Niners and Raiders preseason game number 2. JT, there was so much talk on draft weekend that the Niners were going to get an infusion of offensive line talent. And I think they probably wanted Charles Grant and or Caleb Rogers. But the Raiders did have 2 picks right there at the end of the third round in front of the Niners. And they took Grant and they took Caleb Rogers. And the Niners had good grades on both those guys. The Niners were then forced to go in a different direction, didn't address the O-line till the 7th round. How has Grant, who's just a ridiculous athlete, long arms, and Rogers, who's one of the fastest offensive linemen in the entire country last year, how have they looked this summer?
Yeah, I got more for you on Rodgers than I do on Grant because I thought Grant played a little bit in the first preseason game, but Rodgers is a player that can play guard. He can play swing tackle. He can do a lot of things there. So for the starting offensive line for the Raiders, which is DJ Glaze and Colt Miller at the tackles, Jordan Meredith is going to be the center. He's never played a down in the NFL at center here. That he's not a center, and Pete Carroll's so impressed with him. They're moving him to center. Jackson Powers Johnson, who won the Remington Award at Oregon 2 years ago, he'll slide to right guard. And then Dylan Parham, who's just a good player. He's not a Pro Bowler, but good. So I think Grant and Rodgers are going to add depth along with Thayer Mumford. And that's a good point. They also brought in Alex Kappa, who Spy Tech was very familiar with. So the Raiders' second line of offensive line, Larry, very good point by you, is pretty good. They're not going to start, but you know how offensive linemen go down. And the Raiders are going to have pretty good depth at that position. But is the starting offensive line for the Raiders going to make a difference? Last year, the Raiders were dead last in the league in rushing. That's an offensive line where Colt Miller was on, Dylan Parham, Jackson Powers Johnson, and DJ Glaze. And they couldn't run the football. Are they going to be that much better this year? We'll see, because they got to run the football. If they can't run the football, Geno is going to be under duress. If they can run it behind this offensive line, I think Geno can have a really big year.
2 last ones for you. There's been an awful lot of people talking about Cam Miller in the draft, and people were saying, oh, man, he'd be a perfect Niner. He's mobile. I believe he's played at North Dakota State. What do you think of Miller? Have you seen Miller much? Is he an NFL quarterback, JT? Is he strictly a backup? What do you think of him?
No, he's got a chance. A lot of people think Tom Brady made that pick, and Tom Brady had everything to do with that pick in the direction they were going in. Remember, no Shedeur Sanders, who was tied with Brady, who went in the 5th round, and they decided to go with Cam Miller, and he's a good player. I called this first touchdown ever in Seattle on a pump fake where he went down the sideline and threw an unbelievable ball to Cedric Jackson, who's related to Bo Jackson. They had a really good hookup. He's going to be a good player. I don't think, Larry, he should compete against Aiden O'Connell. I think Aiden O'Connell's one of the better backups in this league. He was drafted by Josh McDaniel. He's the last quarterback, Aiden O'Connell, trivia, to win at Kansas City at Arrowhead. Last quarterback to win there. So he's the backup. But Cam Miller is the type of guy that you can bring in an RPO situation. And I think he's a bright future player here. He reminds me a lot of Jeff Garcia. I made the comparison. He looks like Jeff Garcia, the size. And when Garcia came into the league and people saw his arm power and saw his mobility and the cockiness he had and the ability to play, I like Cam Miller. The Raiders quarterback room is pretty good with Geno Smith, Aiden O'Connell, and the rookie Cam Miller.
And then Tommy Mellott, the former quarterback who's now playing receiver. I saw this guy play at Montana State. People were telling me before the draft, oh, watch out for Tommy Mellott. He's definitely an athlete. Is he a good enough athlete to play wide receiver in the NFL? They're trying to make it the conversion.
Yeah, he is good enough. He'll be a really interesting decision. I think he's going to make the team and the 53-man roster, but there's a lot of competitiveness there because the Raiders have their core wide receivers of Trey Tucker, Dante Thornton, Jacoby Myers, Jack Besh, which takes us to 4. And you look at that, I think they have a spot for Tommy Mellott, who could also take back punts and do a lot of things here. Remember, Hunter Renfrow was very successful with the Raiders as a slot receiver for a couple of years. Very good. And I think they're looking at Tommy Mellott that way. You can line him up in the slot. He knows positioning. He's a former quarterback, and he can go there and make plays. He could be an emergency quarterback. Not that they bring him in for there a lot, but that was a pick that came late in the draft where a lot of teams late in the draft, they'll take one more offensive lineman, one more defensive tackle that never make the team or never make a difference. Tommy Mellott's an athlete that I believe Tom Brady also looked at and said, hey, this is some guy we can mold and turn him into some type of player here. But he's competing for a spot to get on the 53 here because it's one of the few times, Larry, I can tell you we've been friends a long time where I've never cared about the Raiders practice squad. I've said it on my shows. I don't care. You're on the practice squad. When you get called up to the game, we'll talk about you. Raiders practice squad is going to be interesting because there are going to be some players here that other teams are going to look at if they don't make the 53 and try to poach the Raiders and John Spidek for. And I think Tommy Mellott, Jack Besh, Dante Thornton are all players that can have an impact on the Raiders this upcoming year.
Hey, JT, it's awesome to see you, man. Awesome to talk to you. We'll let you go with this one. Tom Brady. I mean, Tom Brady's is beloved here in the Bay Area for good reason. He went to Sarah, and everybody loves that family and his story. What's Brady's impact? You mentioned he liked the quarterback. Obviously, he's got a hands-on deal, but you got Spytech. Do you see him there? Will Niner media people see him at the joint practice? Will he be at the game? How visible is he, and what role does he have, or does he have multiple roles?
He's got a lot of power in the organization. Mark Davis gave it to him. It's Mark's team. Mark owns it, the son of Al Davis. Tom Brady bought in and got a big chunk of ownership. He didn't get a little piece. Tom Brady's got a nice chunk of this team with his group going forward, and his handprints are all over this team when it comes to culture, training, style of play, how to win. Pete Carroll said it in his press conference. Had a lot to do with Pete coming here to have the ability to talk to Tom Brady and try to bring their visions together. So Tom Brady's going to have an interesting impact. It's very unique, his situation with Fox, and as you know, the league, because once the league year starts, the season starts, he's not allowed in our building. Can't come in the Raiders building, and he can't go in the Niners building. He's got a Niner game. He can't go into the building and interview Kyle. He's got to do those interviews on the field before the game because the owners put a big restriction on him because he's an owner now. So fair or not, Tom Brady's been around a little bit. He was at our mock game and a couple of the practices here. I don't know if he'll be at this game against the 49ers. I hope he is. He opened up an exhibit, the Hall of Excellence, at Fontainebleau Hotel with Jim Gray. So for all of your listeners, the next time you come to Vegas, if you're a Brady fan, go to the Fontainebleau and go to the Hall of Excellence for like $30. You could see the greatest pieces of memorabilia ever, including all 7 of Tom Brady's rings. You'd think some of the rings would be in the Bay Area, some would be in New England. No, they're all in Vegas with his private collection, his draft card, where he was drafted, his Michigan jersey. So Tom Brady has a big impact on the Raiders and Las Vegas, and hopefully the Raiders start winning now because with Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, Geno Smith, Pete Carroll, Tom Brady, it sure looks and feels different down here in Vegas, Larry.
JT, Bay Area fans love you. They love hearing you. Awesome to have you jump on KMBR. For those people who've lost connection with you, JT, just remind them, where's the best place? If they want to, there's a lot of Raider fans here. There's a lot of JT the Brick fans here. If they've lost connection with you, they've lost connection with the Raiders, and they really want to kind of reconnect, tell people where and when and how to connect to you.
The Raiders official team app is one of the best apps in all of sports. There's a radio button in the upper right corner. I'm on noon to 2 every day. I also got my YouTube channel, JT the Brick YT for YouTube, JT the Brick YT. Please subscribe. And then I'm on Mad Dog Radio a couple of nights a week on Sirius XM channel 82. So busier than ever, but the Raider fans, the Bay Area fans, the Niner fans, the Niner Empire, I came up with that term. I appreciate y'all. Please find me because I got a lot of content, and on Instagram at JT the Brick LV. Hope to see you here in Vegas.
Love to hear you on Mad Dog. I was on Mad Dog at the outset of that thing. I hosted overtime from, if you can believe it, 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. with no commercials, 56 minutes an hour. That was a grind. But Dog treated me very, very well, and the people, Cohen and all the people at Mad Dog treated me so well. So, JT, thanks for jumping on KNBR. Have a great call Saturday. JT will be on the Raider broadcast with Matt Millen and Eric Allen. Thanks for jumping on the leader tonight. We always love hearing from you. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Larry. Great to talk to you.
We got more straight ahead. It's Niners Nightly. We got more straight ahead for you. We'll talk a little Niner ball and look ahead to the matchup next on the Sports Leader.